Hello, gamers. Welcome back to another episode of the Cuddlepunk podcast. I am your host, Veronica Vext. With me today, we have the founder, the CEO, the all-around dear leader of Ska Punk International. You can see him and many Ska Punk International bands and Ska Punk International family bands at SPI Fest coming up May 17th and 18th in beautiful Windsor, Connecticut. Cool Chris is here, everybody. Give it up for Chris. Chris, how you doing today?
What's up? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. This is awesome. I met Michi through just like finding Mega Infinity on Spotify a while ago. It's cool that like this is being able to happen right now.
Yeah, incredible. I mean, Michi is amazing at connecting people, and this just proves that.
She's the best. They're just the best human being. So you are the leader and founder of Ska Punk International. Before we get into SPI specifically, what's your background in music and promotion and labels and everything like that?
I'll try to do a short version because there's a ton in that.
Rant as long as you want to. That's what the show's for.
Well, I mean, I first got into just like music overall, not just like ska punk. I don't know, when I was like 10 or 11 or something, I started playing music in school. Like I started playing the violin in fourth grade. That turned into playing guitar in sixth grade. Like my dad would just teach me chords on his acoustic, and I got my own like cheap $100 Fender Squire from my grandparents for Christmas in either sixth or seventh grade. And I don't know, I just started crappy cover bands with my friends in like garages after that. And then eventually through skateboarding and skating, I found like the music that I still really love, like hip hop and ska punk and hardcore and stuff, because the soundtracks of those would all have insane cool bands. And so I'd like pause the credits at the end and write down all the names and go to the record stores and be like, "Do you have this? Do you have this?" It'd be like the Suicide Machines and like a Tribe Called Quest and stuff like that. And that kind of just informed a lot of like starting to go to shows and seeing these different types of things, and just starting to kind of inform the way I view things with like a more DIY mindset. When I went to college, like at the time I was in a ska punk band and we were doing our own shows and going on tours, and we were like making all our own merch and our flyers and stuff. And I was into the idea of learning more about how to do that better. So I started studying advertising, and that band didn't last that much longer, but I finished. And so I studied advertising and marketing in school. And that led me to working at agencies and eventually starting my own ad agency with my wife that we did for 5 years. But as something like that grows, you realize you're not doing any of the fun stuff. All the people that you've hired are doing the fun stuff, and all you're doing is stressing out about payroll. And so we just eventually like found them all other jobs at another agency, and I just kept doing this type of thing. And she went to like corporate stuff, but the whole DIY thing has always like been part of me, and always trying to start my own thing that's less like built around people that are making the world worse. Because that's ultimately, when you're doing something like an ad agency, that's what you have to do to keep your people paid, which is awful. So I've been like a freelance doing different types of like things around the marketing world, like podcast production or web design or whatever, just to survive since 2012. So a lot of that work dried up during the pandemic, and my wife was sick of me talking about, because she's we will go to shows and we have a lot of music in common, but not ska. It's definitely not ska punk. Some of the more like jazzy bass ska stuff she's into, but not the rest. So she was sick of me talking about all these bands she didn't care about. She was like, find someone else to talk to about that. So I just started talking about it online with the podcast, and it turned into the label. And because of my background in marketing and stuff, it had like a little bit of like took off quick, just because of like things I already knew how to do that some
Yeah,
other
you guys
people
have
in the
been
scene.
going insane like very quickly if this started during the pandemic.
Yeah, like the label itself didn't really even become a thing until 2021, because it was more like just the podcast the first like year or so. So all the stuff that's happening has really only happened in like 3 years, which is nuts. 3 years in October, actually. So it's still not even a full 3 years of the label. So a lot of that has to do with my background and all that stuff. I'm definitely not like a capitalist and any of this stuff, and I definitely don't pay myself out of any of these things. Like I don't make any money on this stuff. Like I'm still freelancing full time and then spending whatever hours I have left each day doing all this stuff. So we're very firmly like a not for profit, you know, learning all that stuff and like viewing it through a DIY lens has definitely been like a big part of me and what I like about the music and the scene. There's a whole lot of my history with music and feeling like I could do this type of thing. It's a little bit delulu, but it was always like, I think I could make it work. And for the most part, it's working. Lots of stuff to improve, but you know, it's going okay so far.
That's all fantastic. Just as somebody who like is coming from the DIY side of things, it's really refreshing to see a label and like this family of bands that are so dedicated to something that is built entirely around giving back to the community itself rather than so much of it going to the label or so much of it going to like the people at the head of everything. It's commendable what you're doing, especially in as dire straits of the music industry as we're in right now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I appreciate you saying all that. And I don't know, it just seems a little crazy to be like motivated by trying to get myself paid. I just feel like that'd be great if this could be the only thing I'm doing, but I don't know. Everyone else is doing so much stuff that they need to get theirs first. I just feel like if some or many of the bands just like take off, then I'll be fine, you know? Like that's most important.
I mean, you're getting
And
like you've managed to get bands like I call them legends in the ska scene at this point. Like you've got them on your shirt, Hans Gruber.
you know what's cool is I feel like the turning point for us is when I started being more like closely working and like just like friends with Kurt and Rosie and Chris and everyone in Oscar and the Diehards. That was um they asked me, they approached me because we were already friends, but they approached me probably like February 2022. Nah, it's definitely or maybe January, February 2022. Doesn't matter. Because the album came out in May 2022, and at that point, yeah, they had been like touring around, and they played Fest once before that because they were on Paper and Plastic. Vinny from Less Than Jake's previous thing. That's they kind of like got access to Fest through that, which is incredible for them. But they weren't known like this. But together, we became this like super like team and both of us it's just like it's not a coincidence that both of us started to like rise quite a bit more working together. Like we're talking constantly. Like I've already talked to most of that band for I don't know quite a bit today, and that's just how it goes. Like every day they're a very chaotic band, but they're very organized at the same time. Like they just present as chaotic like on stage. You know, when it came to like I'm trying to figure out how to do this, so they'll be like, oh, here's how we did that. Like, whoa, that's cool. And I'll be like, this is how I did this. And they're like, great. And we just like share everything with each other. I appreciate you calling them legends. I feel like we got a long way to go for that, though. Like both of us have somewhat lofty goals.
I
Um,
was hearing about Hans Gruber long before I heard about SPI. So
I mean, that's incredible. I
you're
love that.
doing work for them for sure. I
I
wanted
love
to
that.
ask, we were talking about Michi earlier on in this conversation. Michi is the only, as far as I know, other employee of SPI, including you. What is bringing them on in terms of being an employee meant for the label as a whole?
Well, first before that, like, yeah, Michi is the only one that I pay like monthly, but I do want to be clear that like it takes a village, and we were just talking about Kurt and Rosie, like the amount of stuff that they put in to help me is like insane. And that goes for most of the bands. Very few of them are not doing some kind of thing to help in some different way. And even some of the bands are like, I mean, like, here's how we can afford to do this record. And they're like, well, we actually have a little bit of money. Like, let us contribute as well, which is obviously super helpful. I just want to make it clear that it's not like a me against the world. And then I added Michi,
No, of course.
but I am still doing, yeah, a lot of stuff. So back to your question. It's been insanely helpful. Some people you just meet them and you're like on the same page. I'm sure you've sort of experienced that at some point. You just like know that you're like in sync. And when I met Michi, that was pretty clear. We didn't really think about it in terms of that for a long time, but they were on our first compilation, which was our first like release overall, Songs for Moms 1. And the first conversation we had in like DMs on Twitter, you can like look back and see that it's like not quite the same as when I initially meet anyone else in the same way. Like instantly they were talking about like, well, we can help share this and we can do this. And it's like, whoa, cool. Like I just looked back at that a couple months ago and didn't even realize that we immediately started talking in that way without really even knowing each other. It's just super helpful for me because I was just talking about how I'm still like working full time and most of that work I'm doing here at home, but I might only have 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day or whatever. And that starts at maybe like 8 or 9 p.m. So it's incredible that like throughout the day, I don't have to be thinking, oh, I need to tear myself away real quick to do this thing or this thing like I did for the first couple of years. I can look at everything at like 7 or 8, and there will already be like emails to press or different things. Like we have Runaway Ricochet coming next week. On Friday, I was totally swamped with a ton of like editing and I didn't even get to look. And then I checked my email at like 6 o'clock and there's already like all this stuff set up for Runaway Ricochet next week. And it's just, I don't know how to describe it because it's fucking sick. Like it's so cool. It's just she just like does everything. I don't even have to be like, can you take care of this thing? It's just like happens. It's just fucking incredible. Like I don't pay her nearly enough for how well she like handles everything for me. Like I say it to her and online a lot, best in the biz, and I fucking mean it. Like incredibly good at her job, and I think everyone should do stuff with her. Like the business that she started with PR outside of SPI is just like taken off, and I hope it just keeps going that way. I hope we're like the smallest piece of the stuff that she's doing because she's fucking great at it.
The episode that I did with Michi a couple months ago now, I'm pretty sure I booked that episode day of because I was just not going to have anything that week. And then Michi just immediately stepped up and said, "Yeah, I'll be on immediately." And that was when I started discussing doing press for the festival with her, and it's
Yeah,
been off to the races since then.
yeah, and I mean like that's a great example of that. Like you and I can't even remember how many because I don't need to, but are just like set up to come cover the festival. And like, that's incredible. Like last year, I didn't even have time to even consider asking anyone to do that. We got, like, I emailed a few like local like papers that like wrote a quick thing about it before the festival happened in Austin. But like coming to cover it and all this stuff, like I was lucky to just get one photographer that was a friend of a friend. Like actual like people coming to do interviews and write stuff, and it's insane. Like, Michi just like handle that. It's incredible. It's fucking amazing. Like I highly recommend if anyone, because this just came up because Michi said like, I can help with a couple of these things last year at SPI Fest. And so that's kind of stayed on my mind for a few months. And then it's just like, yeah, fuck it, let's do this. Like I highly recommend if people are saying things like that to you to just be like, yeah, let's do it.
Usually, if people are saying that kind of stuff, they know what they're doing. It's the opportunity of a lifetime to be able to do press for the fest. I still have not been able to buy my plane ticket just yet, unfortunately, due to being unemployed up until right before the festivals. But, we'll make it happen. It'll be fine.
Nice. Well, don't feel bad. I actually haven't bought mine either.
All right, so we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, that's fine.
Yeah.
That makes me feel a lot better, honestly. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I got to do that, but I don't know. I know that there's enough like random flights. I probably end up having to leave at like 5 a.m. or something, but whatever. I'll figure it out. It'll be fine. We got a hotel though. I have booked
I
that.
also have a hotel. I do have a hotel.
I do know where I'm sleeping, but I don't know how I'm getting there yet. But I'll do it. I'll do it.
We'll both figure it out. We're talking about SPI Fest, the first one. First of all, why Austin? And second of all, just where did the idea for the festival come from? Because again, it's this thing of like, you've been doing this for like 2 years, 3 years at this point, and the label is already big enough that you were able to put on a fest of that magnitude.
Okay, so first, Austin happened for a couple reasons. A large one is because of what we were just talking about with Hans Gruber and the Diehards, knowing that I already had them there that I can lean on, and they at the time still weren't drawing that well in their local city. That when they were going on tour, they were having way more people show up than in Austin because Austin is like a very weird market. That has changed in the last year, which is incredible. But I make a lot of decisions. You can probably kind of tell based on where people that I trust are, and they were already there, and so that makes a lot of sense. And I'm in Texas as well, so I'm not in Austin. I'm in Dallas, but it's not that far away. About a 3-4 hour drive. Dallas definitely couldn't do this, but Austin made sense, and since they were there, and then the other large thing was that Young Costello, specifically Jacob, the bass player for Young Costello, in Austin and in San Antonio, for many years ran a show with more just like Texas focused bands called Ska Implosion or Explosion, Implosion. Did that for many, many years, but stopped doing it around like 2019 and then the pandemic. Because I was already talking about doing some stuff with Young Costello. Jacob was like in 2022, was like, hey, I'm going to bring this back. Can you help me find a couple larger out of state bands to sort of like up the profile of this as other sex bands? Like, yeah, that's no problem. So we got Flying Raccoon Suit to come down and play that. We did a day in Austin and then a day in San Antonio, and the rest of the lineup was, I don't remember all of it, but it was Hans Gruber, Los Curados, San Costello, Flip, and the combined effort. Oh, there was like 7 or 8. I can't remember all of them. The Big News from Oklahoma. And then in San Antonio was slightly different. Los Cagaleros played, which are fucking sick if you've never heard them. And so that wasn't an official SPI Fest thing, but we sold those out. Well, San Antonio didn't quite sell out, but it came really close. But that one in Austin, just that alone on one day, sold out. So then I was like, oh, I think I could do this on a little bit of a bigger scale. I think so. But it was a little bit exhausting. So I was not totally sure. And then what really pushed me over the edge is as this became more and more of a label throughout the next like 6 months after that. I don't mean to be like a little bit of a bummer, but you sort of referenced how tough the industry is. A lot of the bands I'm attracted to and that we bring in are kind of weird. They don't really fit in genre stuff. And that makes it really, really fucking hard to get booked on stuff, especially when you're even like a little bit related to ska. A lot of festivals, without naming names, will tell you we have enough ska already. We're good because they've already booked a bunch of bands from a specific other label. And that makes it really hard that there's like only a specific like number of spots, or these other things are other festivals overall would just be like, no, like you might have only one song that's ska, but no. And so I'm seeing all these people that I care about struggle because they want to play outside of their market, but without like an anchor with something like a festival, it's you just can't. You just can't do it because of the way things are. So I decided, okay, well, that sort of like test thing worked. Fuck it. I'm just gonna book everyone that can't get booked everywhere else, and let's just see what we can do. And the first one last year, 2023, I kind of put on a few larger bands to sort of like pull in tickets and then hope that enough people buy those and show up early to see some of these other bands that they might not know. And it worked pretty well. We sold those out. We didn't sell them out until like day of, like walk ups, but we did. And it was packed both days, the whole time. Every band played to, in many cases, the biggest show they've ever played. So a lot of it was drawn by the fact that most of the ones I'm booking can't get anyone to give them a shot. So I'm trying to create it for them. And many of them from last year went on to have like a bigger 2023 because it like springboarded stuff, getting press with that, having like video shared of just like a room full of people going crazy to this thing and people going, whoa, I didn't know who this band was. Like, what the fuck? I mean, Plastic Presidents are a great example of that. They played. A lot of people didn't even know who the hell they were on the list. Their album came out 3 months after that. And we just were celebrating the 1 year anniversary of that. And it's hit like 22,000 streams on Spotify. And we didn't put on vinyl, which I think is the biggest mistake I've made. We only did CD and tape, but they were one of Brooklyn Vegan's best of 2023. And I just, for many, many months, could not keep enough CDs and tapes in. It just like, it was crazy. Like, I could go down the list. Like, you've talked about Michi and Mega. Like, they've had a great year. The EP they put out is almost outstreamed their original album with less songs because they've springboarded out. Like, I could just go down the list. Like, so that's why I did it. I had to find a way to create some stuff for a lot of these people that I believe in. And no, we don't book only ska. We don't book only, I guess it's only ska. And they're not only SPI bands, but just because they're not on my label doesn't mean that bands aren't having a hard time getting opportunities and that I don't believe in them. There's just only so much space of stuff I can put out, you know? And this gives me another way to help some bands.
It's really remarkable just what the year that you've had already in 2024 coming off of all the success of that. You're talking about Plastic Presidents being on Brooklyn Vegan. You've got like Mutiny and EV Echoes in the locations and Runaway Ricochet that we were talking about earlier. Like these are bands that probably would not have had as much success as they're currently having without something like SPI and the festival and the label to put them on. Especially like Evie, I've seen like going absolutely crazy online. People love that record. I love that record.
Yeah,
That is a current contender for me on my album of the year list right now.
I mean, amazing. Like I hope so. Um, I think that I actually still haven't seen Evie live yet. Like I've been around Evie in person multiple times and just like an incredible, like magnetic person. But I still haven't seen them play yet. But you can tell based on videos and just like photos that like the crowds are growing for Evie. And obviously I see the numbers. I know like what we sold and the streams are crazy. Definitely exceeding expectations. I don't know. Evie's just an incredible person. I hope Runaway Ricochet takes off. We'll see. It's out in a few days. I don't know when this comes out, but it's probably out by the time this is out. So please go stream the Runaway Ricochet record. It's definitely the most ambitious thing we've done. Like it's a double LP. The songs are long, which is really not great for things like streaming algorithms, but it's important for the band's vision, and I want to support that with them. I think that the stuff they've put together is incredible. I think it's like an instant classic. Like there's so many things on that record that as they would send me like rough mixes and demos and things, I would just be like, I've never heard that before. Almost on every single song, there's something that I've just never heard before. I could talk about that forever. Like I want to be a place where bands can try stuff and feel like they can just be what they want to be. And sometimes that means they're not going to be very ska. Sometimes they're going to be very ska. And I think that that's evident in this one. And when they said, yeah, we have like 13 songs and it's about an hour long, and it's like, well, I guess we're doing 2 records for the first time. Like, I guess that's what we're doing because I like these songs are fucking crazy and incredible. Like, I can't imagine being like, well, let's cut like 7 of these. Like, why? Let's just figure out how to make it work. And so I really hope that people will give it a shot. I hope they'll talk about it. I hope they'll share it because we're gonna need a lot of help. The last single we put out, we even like cut off. It's like the single version. We cut off 2 minutes of the song for streaming just to try to get a little bit more juice going into the record. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know. I'm very excited about it. I think it's incredible. It's one of the best things we've done, but we're gonna need some help. We know that we've got like an uphill battle, but their set is gonna be insane at SPI Fest, and I would love for a band like that to take off because wow, they're cool. They're so cool.
Everybody, after you finish watching or listening to this episode, go stream Diminishing Returns by Runaway Ricochet. That's one of my most anticipated releases for this year. I'm stoked as hell about that record.
Oh yeah.
Before we get into the bit, I wanted to ask about Mutiny because
Mm-hmm.
this is a huge thing where all of these like legends of ska punk and hardcore coming together, and their very first show is at SPI Fest
Mm,
2024 in Windsor.
yeah.
How did the like Mutiny, I imagine, was already kind of a thing before they signed to you guys, but you were able to make the announcement about them. So what was that process going into it?
Honestly, it was crazy and hectic, but also it's still surreal to me. Yeah, I don't know. Like a lot of the it was just something that never seemed possible because a lot of what I'm doing, stuff I've even talked about on this, is like I'm not as into a lot of the bands that I used to like and grew up listening to anymore. Like if they're still together, they are still doing a similar thing. They haven't really like changed, and so in a lot of ways, it's like, well, I've kind of heard that before, or they just aren't great, or they turn out to be problematic, um,
We'll get into
or they're
that.
just,
We'll get into
or
that in the bit, I'm sure.
or yeah, or they're just not together anymore or something. So the idea of like, oh, maybe I guess I won't name names, but oh, like so and so will like maybe I'll be able to put out the record one day. It's not even a thing I really consider or think about. I very much look up to Voodoo Glow Skulls and Death by Stereo. Death by Stereo specifically, like just a band that I was obsessed with for a lot of my life. Two of their records are something I still listen to almost like weekly, but it just never seemed possible. But once we started working with Power Up, because they're friends with their sax player, Eric, it's in Voodoo Glow Skulls, that is also in Mutiny, plays on the Power Up record and is really good friends with them. Aaron from Power Up just kind of reached out, like, hey, would you be interested in talking to them about this thing? And I'd already heard rumors about it. You might have heard on like other places that it was like not a great kept secret, because a lot of the members of the band, they aren't great at keeping stuff to themselves, because they're just, when they're excited about stuff, they just talk about it. If you look
Homie, I'm
enough
wearing a
places,
CM Punk hat. I know about worst kept secrets.
if you look enough places online, you can find stuff that they've leaked about other shows and other things. They just can't help it. So there were other places and other people that had told me, hey, have you heard about this? Like, it's like a manga, it's like a narrative thing. It's got like some Voodoo Glow Skulls, it's got some Dissidenti, and it's got like, holy shit, that's something incredible. So when Aaron asked me, hey, would you be interested in hearing about that? They want to talk to you about it. Like, yeah, of course I fucking want to talk. Yeah. Yeah, of course I want to talk about that. So I met with all of them except for Chris Ruckus at Supernova last year, because they were all there because of, most of them were there because of Voodoo Glow Skulls playing. And that was pretty much when it was set. Like, we talked, and it was a similar thing where like we just clearly were like in sync about the goals. Like, a thing that I was very nervous about going into talking to them was like, are they having expectations of like, we're going to get like 2,000 copies of this on vinyl and we're going to like have this like huge thing, because that's not something we can afford, and that would probably bankrupt us. Like, I'd have to get like a loan and do all this shit that like I don't think is worth just one thing. And they were like, no, 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 we know we're a new band. Treat us like you would any new band. It doesn't matter that we're from these other things. You can use those other things in terms of trying to get press and stuff, but no, like, you know, get a reasonable number of copies like you would for anything, and we'll just see what happens. Like, well, fuck, great, let's do it then. Like, hell yeah. But that, like I said, was a supernova. So September until we announced it in February was like all over the place, because they're in all these other bands. They're on tour all the time, and it took a lot of
Like
time
Voodoo
for
Glow
us.
Skulls is about to go on tour with fucking Vampire Weekend.
Yeah, yeah. Like, and the week before they have the SPI Fest show, Death by Stereo was in Hawaii. So it's a whole thing of like organizing the logistics of that. So that's just like what it's like with them. It's like, it's chaotic, but you know, it's okay. It's worth it in my
It's the
opinion.
best
But
kind of chaos.
yeah, yeah, like, it's not like, and none of them are like, oh, you know, fuck you, like figure it out. It's just sort of like, well, we have this booked. Is there a way we can make this work? But that's like at Supernova, I already kind of had a loose plan for SPI Fest. So I was like, well, if we're doing this, you have to play. Like, when we announce this, people are going to be like, holy shit, you have to play at this thing we're doing in May. And they're like, great, let's do it. We'll email you our schedules and this, and we'll figure out when to fit in and all that stuff. So, you know, it's just staying in constant contact and figuring the things out. But it did take a while, because even though they had songs done by the time Supernova, there wasn't any art. And the Japanese versions that we put out, those didn't exist yet. That was an idea that we all came up with together after we decided to do this. So getting all that done took a while. And so when we finally had everything ready to announce, it was literally the week before we did. Like, it was like, we got to get this going. If you're playing, like, we got to, because it was a little hectic to go, we got to start announcing SPI Fest, but I can't talk about Mutiny yet. And that's like a big part of the festival. So it was like, hurry up, we got to get this out. Like, okay, let's talk about it, and then let's fucking announce you like immediately. Like, I don't know if you remember, but it was like they were announced, and then they were announced for SPI Fest the next day, and they were announced for Supernova the day after that, because there's so many things waiting to drop already. So it was a little hectic, but it was, I wouldn't change it. Like, I'm glad I'm able to be part of it. And it's just insane to be able to just like talk to people that have that much knowledge about how things have gone and how things are now. Like anything I'm confused about how to handle, I could just call one of them or text, depending on who it is. Not everybody likes phone calls, and say, how should I do this? Or can we do this? Would you be into helping with this? And it's always like, yes, let's do it. And I mean, that's fucking, it's incredible.
We're talking about the Ska Legends in Mutiny. We've been talking about Ska Legends a little bit, some awesome, some problematic. We're going to be talking a whole lot more about those legends in just a bit. We will be right back with more of this episode of the Cuddlepunk Podcast. Welcome back to the Cuddlepunk Podcast. I am here with Ska Punk International leader and CEO, Cool Chris. We have been talking about a whole lot of ska today. And if you've seen my interview that I did last year with Joram from Rustring and Devin Kane the Solutions and Direct Hit, you know that a big part of a very, very large percentage of ska fans, their first introduction to ska was the soundtrack to a certain movie. So, Chris, what we are going to do is we are going to be doing a tier list. Everybody loves tier lists. We're doing a tier list of every song on the Digimon soundtrack.
Oh
Digimon,
boy.
the movie released in 2000. I have never seen this film. I've only recently become acquainted with the soundtrack about a year ago. As a result, I did not know that this was like the album that got so many people into ska, but I love a lot of the songs on this thing, and we're mostly gonna have you just like carry the load on this one, and I'll just
Ooh.
be like chiming in with my commentary or whatever if I have any disagreements or agreements or anything like that. But this is mostly your show as the leader of Ska Punk International. This is putting your credibility on the line here, Chris.
Oh boy. Really put me on the spot. Holy shit. Well, I gotta say, first of all, this one is not one that I really was connected with or find that important. I have also heard from many, many, many people how they found Less Than Jake and the Boss Tones because of this. But I think that's kind of like the generation under me because this came out like 2000, right? Yeah, so I was 18. I was just starting college. I think it came out in like the fall or something. Maybe I was just about to graduate. I don't remember. But my
I'm questioning
sister,
whether or not to tell you how old I was when this album and movie came out.
I think I can handle it if you really want to share that. But
I think I was like 1 or 2.
oh,
I was
holy
December
fuck.
98.
I
I
take it
like,
back. No,
I'm
I'm just
sorry,
kidding. I
dude.
can handle it. No, it's fine. It's fine. I know I'm old. My sister is
Who
12 years
said
younger
that?
than
I
me.
didn't say that. Those words didn't leave my mouth.
My sister is 12 years younger than me though. And so a lot of things that were happening that maybe like other friends of mine were ignoring or not really like paying attention to, I was finding out about or like seeing or things like that. And this is an example of that. I have a very specific memory of being back home for Christmas break after my first semester of college. And my sister used to like shut herself in her room and just like play like Hillary Duff and whatever else like really loud as our rooms are right next to each other. And I have a very distinct memory of hearing all my best friends were metalheads coming from her room. And yes, she would like maybe sometimes I'd be like, let's go get Taco Bell, and I'd like drive her places and stuff. So she's like heard things that I was listening to. So I was like, wait a minute, are you listening to my CD? And it was like, no, I'm listening to Digimon. And I looked at the CD like, whoa, okay, very cool. So I wasn't like listening to it, and I've seen the movie, but I do know all the songs. So I think I can be fair in a tier list here.
We'll see if that's true. I'm sure you'll be able to be very fair. We're going to start off with the song that I think was on the most soundtracks for movies of the entire early 2000s, All Star by Smash Mouth.
Mm.
I'd probably put this one in an F.
Oh wow, I would put it more like in the middle. I think the song is like way overplayed. But if you're able to separate how many fucking times you've heard it and think like it's actually like a well-crafted pop song, I think that's okay. I think that's okay if that's your opinion. I don't ever think I want to listen to it. So, I don't know. C or D or something, I think is fine.
We'll put it in C. We'll put it in C. We're not going to put it right at the end there. I'm realizing I didn't put an F on here, but that's fine. My whole thing with this one is Walking on the Sun is better, and I wish that that was the song that got as much overplay as All Star still does, because you never
Well,
hear Walking on the Sun anymore. Like, I know it was overplayed as to hell, like when it first came out, when that album first dropped, but I don't hear Walking on the Sun nearly as much anymore as I do All Star.
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, they definitely have better songs. Like that first album, it's like all ska punk. Problematic title, but Padrino is like one of the best ska punk songs of all times. So if you want to check out Fushimeng, there are like killer ska punk songs. So they do have better songs. I'm fully agreeing with you on that. But I don't think All Star deserves as much hate as it gets. There are way worse songs that have been overplayed, is my opinion, I guess.
That's totally fair, and that's a good way of seeing it. Next up, the impression that I get by Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, F or D.
Yeah,
I don't think I
I'm with
need to
you.
like question that one.
Yeah, I mean, similarly, like they have way better songs that exist. This one was played way too much, and I think it's probably like the worst song on that album. If you want to be serious, I understand why it was a single and why it did well, but yeah, I'm cool with that being really low. Like I don't really have any nostalgia for that, and I'm definitely not even that big of a fan of theirs now. It's turned pretty bad for them.
My whole thing with
Really,
Dickie is that he not only fucked up his band, he fucked up his Jimmy Kimmel gig. Like, that's SAG money, that's serious coinage.
right.
And he just fucked it up entirely by being a stupid anti vaxxer.
Yeah, and I mean, some of them, like Joe Gittleman and stuff, are going on to do more stuff, that's great. That's cool. He was like co-writer on Impression That I Get. And so if you're into that sound that still exists in the world, I personally am not super into it. So yeah, put it pretty low. Like that's cool.
I will say that I did see Boss Tones do all of Let's Face It twice in 2017, and that was really, really cool. But we
Yeah,
don't
I mean,
need to give them any more. The Mighty Mighty Boss Tones have enough press in the ska world.
for sure. That's definitely true. And they were an incredible live band. I saw them many times. Not I don't think I saw them after 2010, but during that era, before that, like Scott Cordell and Moore and stuff like that, like I saw them quite a bit. But yeah, I don't think we need to like boost them up or anything. I think they're fine. I
As
think
a Massachusetts girly, I am very supportive of bands that come from Massachusetts and just the New England in general. Even I am now like, there's a certain amount of shame that comes with saying that I will listen to Let's Face It every now and again.
hmm. I mean there are good songs on that, like really good songs on that.
Really great
But
songs.
I've heard it enough in my life. I don't ever listen to it anymore.
Absolutely. Next up,
Yeah.
speaking of ska legends, we'll see how we feel about this one. All My Best Friends Are Metalheads by Less Than Jake. This is probably the song that has single-handedly gotten the most people into ska, maybe ever.
It's definitely up there. I like it more than the Impression That I Get, that's for sure. At least a B, probably. I think the lowest I could go is a C.
What do you think of Less Than Jake? If you're gonna be up here,
Yeah,
being a
give us the hot take on
what do you
LTJ.
think, Wyatt? Perfect, wonderful.
Yeah, great.
This
Nailed
is
it.
the worst he's ever been during an interview.
The worst you've ever been.
But yeah, uh, all my best friends are metalheads. Less than Jake.
They have better songs, but they have a lot worse songs.
That's true.
I put it in their top tier of songs. The harmonies and stuff are really good. It's great melody, super hooky. But I've seen the clip 100 times of people like Jer talking about that scene from this movie is very influential. So I think that alone we need to put it fairly high up, just
I
because
think
that.
we should bump it up to an A, just due to its influence
Yeah,
on the culture.
yeah, I think that's fine. That's fair with me. Like I don't ever listen to Less Than Jake. Really? Yeah, really. Like I've heard them enough in my life. I think we need to account for the impact. I think that's fair,
Absolutely,
especially because we roasted Impression That I Get. So
we did.
I need to allow this one. And I think in terms of this movie, the way the Impression That I Get is included isn't even that important anyway. They just happen to be on the soundtrack. But All My Best Friends Are Metalheads are like very early in the movie, and so even if you missed a huge part of the movie, you saw that part, and that's why it hooks so many people, in my opinion.
Next up is the Digirap.
I mean,
This is
I
where we're getting
listened.
into stuff that I don't really know, because this, like, the actual like Digimon related songs are not available fucking anywhere.
Yeah. Well, I went to find it on YouTube last night, and I did not love it. So I would say put it pretty low. I think that's just gonna piss off Digimon fans, but I don't think it was very good. So D, I guess, since that's the lowest one you have. Like, I think it sucked.
I think we can agree that in terms of songs that are just like rap-esque things that are based on anime that was very big in the early 2000s, I think we can agree that the Pokemon polka from Weird Al is the superior one.
Oh, definitely. I mean, any polka he does is better than the original. I don't.
True. That's just facts.
Yeah,
That's
that's
just
just a fact.
undisputable facts.
Yeah,
Next up, Run Around. We were talking about this one just before this
yeah,
started. I
yeah.
want to hear your opinions on Run Around.
I think it sucks.
We're just going to go ahead and put that in D.
I think it's bad. Like, I remember some people. I've seen like a couple TikToks about how influential the soundtrack is, and saying that that song is like a big reason why they like pop punk and stuff. And I think another one we're gonna get to is way better and should be viewed as more influential of why people like pop punk. But that one I don't think has a very good hook. It's pretty boring compared to especially stuff at the time, like in the 2000s where there was so much good stuff that sounded like that. I think this one is just very basic. I think it sucks.
Runaround to me sounds like a kind of song that would be in like a Sonic Adventure game.
Mm-hmm.
Like it sounds like it's Crush 44 core, like Sonic core type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why a lot of people like it because I know there's a huge fan base for Crush 44 and all of their Sonic stuff. But
That's
and
fair.
I like Runaround to a certain extent, but again, it's your list. We're gonna give it the D that it needs. We're giving Runaround the D. That's a great soundbite for everybody.
Great.
Hey Digimon.
I mean, I like it more than the Digi Rap, but I didn't love that either. I would put that as a C, I think. Again, like,
I think people will be okay with that.
yeah. Again, like I just didn't really have like nostalgia or connection to this. So I kind of am just like hearing the songs and I just didn't make me care about Digimon at all.
Nowhere near by summer camp.
Okay, yeah. That's the one that I think is incredible. I think I hadn't heard it since forever ago. And listening to it again yesterday, I was like, holy shit. I would put that like an S. I think it's the best thing on the soundtrack.
Nowhere near
Like
summer camp is our first and probably only S, everybody.
the chorus is so cool. The chord progression is interesting. It's awesome. I listened to it like 6 times yesterday. The song is so cool.
Here we go is the next song, not just me saying things.
I didn't even finish it. I didn't. It was just like, okay, well, I'm
Right
listening to
down here.
this.
We are
Yeah,
not
throw
the
it on
actual
D.
like Digimon related songs themselves are not doing too great here.
No, I wasn't impressed by any of them.
That's fair. That's completely fair. I mean, if you're writing like it takes a decent amount to write like a truly great like song that's based on the actual movie.
Right.
Like Ghostbusters and Power of Love are like the like two main and Power of Love doesn't really have that much to do with Back to the Future in the first place. I
Yeah,
guess a
it
better
just
comparison would be Men in Black.
yeah, like the TMNT Turtle Power song, something like that. It's really hard to do. It's very rare. There are more than the ones we just said, but that's because they're not good, so we don't remember them.
Exactly.
So I don't know. I wasn't impressed by any of those really.
Spill by Show Off.
I would put that at probably a B or C. Like it's not going to be summer camp, but what is? It was fine. I wasn't like mad about it. It was just like, okay, this is happening.
I think that's about what Show Off deserves. Next up, we have Len's cover of Kids in America by Kim Wilde.
Yeah. So
Great song. Great original song.
yeah, great original. This song has been a lot of places. I actually forgot it was on this soundtrack. It's been on other soundtracks. Been like kind of overplayed. Like I guess my opinion on this one is similar to the All Star one, which is like I think it's been overplayed, but there are much worse songs. So I feel like we got to put it at least C or maybe even B because it's probably better than All Star.
I'd probably put
But
this one in B just because Kids in America is like an all time favorite track for me. And
yeah,
the weird thing is that I was introduced to this song. This is kind of showing, like, again, a generational thing. The Jonas Brothers made a version of this song called Kids of the Future for the movie Meet the Robinsons. And the video for that playing on Disney Channel was how I originally found out about the song. And then it was also in like Jimmy Neutron and a bunch of other stuff.
That version that you're talking about for Meet the Robinsons gives me hives. I was working at a movie theater chain. I don't think it's outside of the South. It's called Cinemark. I was working in the corporate office as a web designer when that movie came out. And I heard that song so many fucking times because we had to like, I don't know if they do it anymore, but at the time, you would get like a version of a trailer from a studio and all the different versions that are played, like you actually, like somebody has to cut those. So you cut like 5 seconds off a thing. So you like find a little like section that you can like take out, the beginning, the end, and the middle, whatever. And you have to do that like over and over again for different amounts of time. And I had to do that for that fucking trailer. And oh god, I don't want to think about it.
I'm not going to go into my Jonas Brothers defense here. That'll be for another episode.
I actually like them, but that specific thing, you just like unlocked a memory that I had forgotten about. But they have some, like Jonas Brothers themselves have some songs I do like.
That first
I
pop
don't
punk
mind them.
album is honestly not bad. Like it's like for like Christian core pop punk, like MXPX type shit. It's decent, especially
Yeah,
because
yeah, they're not bad.
they were genuine. Like just I think two of them weren't even like teenagers at that point.
Hmm. Yeah, they're not bad. I don't mind them.
1 Week by the Bare Naked Ladies.
I mean, it's been overplayed, but it's kind of undeniable. I feel like it's got to be an A.
I think an A. Homework for everybody who's watching or listening to this. After this, and after you've listened to the Runaway Ricochet record, listen to Gordon by Bare Naked Ladies. It is a completely it is one of the 90s albums that is where its praises have gone completely unsung, and it deserves way more than it's been given.
Perfectly said. I think that album was incredible. Super underrated.
And then finally we have
As that's Rockefeller Skank, right?
Rockefeller Skank. That's the name of it. Yes.
Yeah,
Rockefeller
that's got.
Skank by Fatboy Slim.
Yeah, I feel like it's got to be at least B or A. I mean, it's the thing over and over again on the soundtrack. They just picked like all like hits, basically, like
Right.
songs that maybe like kids didn't really know or something. But um, definitely like overrated. The only thing I would say, if you want to get technical about it, is they cut this version short. It's like a, I don't remember what they called it, like the short version or something.
Like a single version.
Yeah, yeah. And some of the coolest stuff that's in that song they cut out. But I mean, like, I get it. Whatever. You have to do that sometimes. I just talked about how we did that for Runaway Ricochet. So I don't think we necessarily need to dock them on that. But I think if you want, for some reason, haven't heard the song and you want to check it out, don't listen to this version of it.
We will
But
give and we'll move it down to B in that case, since it's like the inferior version of the song, but we will make sure that Woodstock 99 survivor Fatboy Slim is able to have some recognition on here. This is the tier list made by Cool Chris for the Digimon the movie soundtrack. Cool Chris, thank you so much for being on this episode of the Cuddlepunk podcast. Where can we find you and where can we find SPI?
so spirecords.com is our website. We're on all the social platforms at Ska Punk International or Ska Punk INCL. You know, it just depends on character limits. You can find us on all of them. And we're there making moves, at least trying to. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for having me. It's been super fun.
Absolutely. This has been a blast. If you're in the New England area and you have not yet, May 17th and 18th is Ska Punk International Fest. You get to see Hans Gruber and the Diehards, Power Up, Common Sense Kid, Runaway Ricochet, Mega Infinity, Evie Echoes in the Locations, Mutiny, Catbite, Call Me Malcolm, and so many more bands. K-Moy is going to be there. We all love K-Moy around here. Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Cuddlepunk podcast. If you like what you see and you want to see more, my link tree is available in the description that will take you to not only all of my social medias, but also video and audio versions of the very podcast that you're listening to right now. If you like what you saw, please like the video. Please leave in the comments what your favorite song of the Digimon soundtrack is, or your favorite band that's going to be at SPI Fest. Please make sure to subscribe to the podcast on all audio platforms and as well on YouTube. If you like what you see and you want to help support, you can go to the Cuddlepunk Podcast Patreon. There's also going to be a link to that in my link tree. The logo for the Cuddlepunk Podcast is done by Lauren Young. You can find her Instagram in the description down below. The theme song for the Cuddlepunk Podcast is Lose a Turn by Modify. You can find her link tree and all of her stuff in the description down below. Shout out to, Ellie. at Queer Cowgirl with a 0 with the line through
Hell
it
yeah.
on Twitter. Her link is in the description. Without her, none of this would have happened. That's my best friend in the fucking world. Cool, Chris. Thank you so much for being on this episode of the podcast. This was fantastic. And I will see you
You're
at
welcome.
SPI Fest.
Yeah, see you soon. We need to book our flights.
Yes, we do.